Firefighting in Canada this week is brought to you by VFIS of Canada, a division of CVIS Incorporated, Canada's largest insurer of firefighters. In this edition, Firefighting in Canada talks with researcher Joy MacDermid about the latest findings on firefighter mental health. Then, Nishnawbe Aski Nation is calling on the federal and provincial government to improve fire prevention in Indigenous communities. And the fire service is ever-changing. We rounded up some of the latest hires and retirements. A recent study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health focuses on the impacts and priorities of career firefighters when it comes to their mental health. The qualitative research, titled Canadian Career Firefighters' Mental Health Impacts and Priorities, is an analysis of interviews with 39 career firefighters about their needs and perceptions when it comes to mental health. Firefighting in Canada spoke with co-author Joy MacDermid, who describes the overarching themes that arose, including the situation firefighters were in when it came to existing resources and legislation, instances where there are two sides of the coin, and uncertainty around making the best choices.
You know, there's so much about mental health we don't know. Everybody wants resiliency training, but we don't really know what its impact are. They want access to treatment, but there is a lot of uncertainty about what treatments are actually effective in mental health. You know, there's these huge needs, but there's not really strong evidence to say what are the best choices. And I would say that exists at a healthcare level. It exists at a policy level. You know, like, should we spend money on this program or that program? There's all this uncertainty because we don't know the answers. We don't know enough about mental health in general. We don't know enough about which policies work and which don't, but yet you can't do nothing. So this big thing about let's do something, but then uncertainty if we're doing the right thing or not.
MacDermid shared that there will be a paper of the same approach coming that looks specifically at some similar but unique findings in the volunteer sector. To hear more, stay tuned for February's Firefighting in Canada podcast featuring host and Fire Chief Tom DeSorcy talking further with MacDermid about firefighter mental health. An organization representing First Nations in northwestern Ontario is calling on the federal and provincial governments to provide better fire prevention and protection funding in Indigenous communities after 3 children died in a house fire, reports the Canadian Press. The tragedy took place in Sandy Lake First Nation on January 14th, and Nishnawbe Aski Nation Deputy Grand Chief Bobby Narcisse said it is the result of inadequate resources, housing, and fire protection infrastructure in First Nation communities. A Statistics Canada study that was commissioned by the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council found last year that Indigenous people are 5 times more likely to die in a fire in Canada than the rest of the population. Many First Nations communities are relying on volunteers with subpar equipment in their local fire departments because they don't have the needed funds to hire a dedicated fire chief and maintain fire prevention services, Deputy Grand Chief Narcisse said in a press release. The call to action is asking governments to help First Nations by implementing fire safety action plans and ensuring that all homes and infrastructures on reserves meet national fire codes. Here's a roundup of some of the latest personnel moves in the fire service. The City of Orillia, Ontario welcomes Michael Clark as their new chief. Phil Alexander, the chief in Uxbridge, Ontario, announced his impending retirement after 35 years in the service. Trent Lee joined the Weyburn Fire Department in Saskatchewan as deputy chief and acting chief. Jim Runciman has come out of retirement and is now fire chief in Grand Forks, BC. Derek Van Pagey will take over as Director of Fire and Protective Services for Norwich Township, Ontario. And Larry Broussard has come from his senior role with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office to Huntsville Lake of Bays Fire Department as their new chief. Thanks again to VFIS of Canada, a division of CVIS Incorporated, Canada's largest insurer of firefighters. Stay tuned for our next episode on Friday, February 4th.